Have you ever heard of a love so deep, so unshakable, that it waited not for days, not for months, but for a whole decade? This is not a fairy tale from the pages of a book. This is a tale from the heart of Africa, passed down through the whispers of elders, by moonlight fires and village gatherings. It is the story of a princess, not one who wore diamonds in her crown, but one who wore hope like armor and faith like fire. A story of promises made under the stars, of loyalty tested by time, of a heart that refused to give up. In the kingdom of Anayera, where the rivers flowed like melted gold and the skies opened with blessings, there lived a girl who waited, and waited, and waited. This is the story of the princess who waited. 10 years now. Close your eyes, listen close, and let us journey back in time. Long ago, in a land rich with the scent of mangoes and the sound of talking drums, stood the kingdom of Anayera. It was a land where the earth bore fruit in every season, and the people danced not just for joy, but to honor the ancestors. A land where the wind whispered stories through the leaves. And every child grew up knowing that magic still walked among them. At the heart of this kingdom stood the royal palace, a majestic fortress carved from red clay, draped with golden fabric, and guarded by warriors who bowed to only one man, King Obeyed. His rule was fair. His voice was law. But even a mighty king has his troubles, and for Obeyed, it was his daughter, Princess Loma. She was not just his only child. She was the sun in his sky, a girl of grace and stubborn fire. Beautiful, yes, with skin like polished ebony and eyes that held stories untold. But more than her beauty was her spirit. Loma dreamed of a world beyond the palace walls. She questioned things others dared not whisper. She spoke to elders with curiosity and to animals with laughter. And when she turned 16, her world changed forever. That year, the kingdom prepared for a rare celebration, the Festival of Three Moons, a night that came once every 10 years, when the sky would bloom with 3 full moons aligned like the beads on a sacred bracelet. It was a time of joy, of wishes, of sacred vows. The palace buzzed with music. Dancers spun like leaves in the wind. Merchants displayed treasures from distant lands. And nobles from other kingdoms came dressed in their finest robes, not just to join the festival, but to catch a glimpse of the princess. But Loma, ever the rebel, slipped away from the festivities. She didn't want diamonds. She didn't want dances. She wanted freedom. She wandered the edge of the palace garden, and that's where she saw him. Kaelo. He was no prince. He was not even a guest. Just a boy, tall, strong, skin glistening, from hours at the forge. The apprentice of the royal blacksmith, he had been sent to deliver the king's newly crafted spear. And in that quiet moment, their eyes met. He was caught off guard. She was caught forever. That night, beneath the triple moons, the princess and the apprentice sat beneath a great baobab tree. She asked him what it was like to work with fire. He asked her what it was like to be caged in gold and under the silver light of the sky. Something ancient and sacred bloomed between them. Every day after that, they met in secret, in quiet courtyards, in silent gardens, beneath hanging lanterns and whispering winds. He showed her the stars. She showed him her soul, but nothing hidden stays. Hidden forever. The king's guards caught them. Kalo was dragged before the throne. Loma cried out, but her voice was drowned by judgment. "What is this foolishness?" The king roared. "You, a commoner, touching royalty." But Kalo stood tall. "I touched no royalty, your majesty," he said. "Only the heart of a girl who made me feel like a prince." Gasps filled the room. The king's judgment was swift. "Leave this kingdom and never return without proof that you are worthy." Kylo turned to Loma. His voice shook, but his words burned with promise. 10 years, he whispered. On the 10th full moon of the 10th year, I will return. Not as a servant, but as a man worthy of your hand. Wait for me, if your heart is mine." And he left with nothing but a satchel, a necklace she had given him, and the fire of love in his chest. That night, Loma stood alone beneath the same tree where they had first met. The triple moons had passed, but their memory lingered, and the princess made her vow. "I will wait," she whispered to the stars. "Even if my bones grow old, I will wait." Narrator closing part 1, and so began the story of the girl who dared to wait for 1 year, then 2, then 5. As the kingdom changed, as suitors lined the palace gates, as time whispered in her ear to forget, she waited because somewhere across deserts and oceans, Kalo journeyed. And destiny had only just begun to write their tale. Year 1 passed quietly. The festival faded into memory. The palace returned to its daily rhythm. New crops were planted, rains came, and the river sang once more. But in the royal chambers, Princess Loma began her long vigil. She wrote letters to Kalo that would never be sent. She kept a piece of his cloak beneath her pillow. And every month, she marked the sky, watching the cycle of the moon as if it were a clock counting down the promise. She told no one about the vow, except her mother, Queen Zinaria, a quiet, wise woman whose own love story had once defied the odds. The queen looked into her daughter's eyes and saw herself younger, fiercer, and far more stubborn. "Love is not always returned, child," the queen whispered, "but waiting for love, that is the purest kind of faith." And so, the queen said nothing more, but she watched. Silently, in the 2nd year, trouble began to stir. The kingdom of Jeruko and Ieras, neighbor to the west, sent an envoy. Their prince Maliku was handsome, battle-scarred, and wealthy. He had heard of Princess Loma's beauty and strength, and he came bearing a proposal, not just of marriage, but of unity. King Obaid was thrilled. A marriage between kingdoms would solidify trade, ensure peace, and strengthen borders. But Loma said no. "Your Highness," Maliku said in disbelief, "I could give you silk, jewels, even armies. What do you wait for?" Loma looked him in the eyes and said, "I wait for a promise made beneath the stars." The court fell silent. Mal-iku, left in rage and shame, and from that day, the whispers began. "She has bewitched herself," they muttered. "A princess bewitched by an absent ghost. What fool waits for 10 years? She's squandering the kingdom's future." The elders grew concerned. The ministers pressed the king. Suitors began arriving more frequently, each more persistent. Then the last. But Loma never wavered. In the 3rd year, she began to isolate herself. The palace, once filled with her laughter, grew quiet. She visited the baobab tree less and less, not because she had stopped believing, but because the pain of remembering became heavier than silence. The people began calling her the silent rose. It's beautiful, but never blooming. And yet, every night, as the moon rose, she whispered one name into the sky: Kalo. By year 4, the rumors turned cruel. They said Kalo had died on the road, robbed by bandits, eaten by hyenas, or worse. Some said he had fallen in love with another woman in a distant land. Others claimed he was a coward, using his exile as an excuse to escape responsibility, and though Loma never said a word, the pain grew sharp in her chest. She stopped eating regularly. She no longer danced. Her once vibrant spirit dimmed like a flame choked by wind until one day a dream shook her awake. She saw Kalo, tired, wounded, but alive. His eyes reached to her in silence. He stood at the edge of a cliff, hands outstretched, as if caught between moving forward and falling back. She woke in tears and made a decision. She would seek the oracle deep within the forest of Tuana. Past tangled vines and ancient trees lived the blind oracle of the bones. No one approached her lightly. Some said she was as old as the mountains, that she could speak with the dead, that she saw more with her blind eyes than any king could with both. Loma went alone, disguised in a plain wrapper cloth. Barefoot, heart-pounding, the oracle sat. In a circle of smoke, her hands scarred with symbols no one could read. "You carry love," she croaked before Loma could speak. "But love is a blade." "I seek truth," Loma whispered. The oracle threw carved bones into the fire. They danced and cracked, revealing visions through flame and shadow. "I see a man," the oracle murmured. "He walks among death, yet carries your name in his soul. His path is lined with blood and betrayal, but he is not the only one." Loma leaned in, breath still. "There is another," the oracle warned. "A shadow close to your throne. One who smiles with a wolf's teeth. Your heart waits, but your crown is not so patient." Loma's voice trembled. "Will he return?" The oracle smiled. "Time is the test. Only one who remembers will return." And with that, the fire went out. Loma returned to the palace changed. Not broken, not healed, just silent. She spoke less, watched more, studied the faces around her. She became a shadow in her own kingdom, watching the ministers, the guards, even the suitors with eyes that missed nothing. By now, her father's health had begun to fail. The weight of years had taken its toll. Queen Zinneria had taken on more royal duties, and the people grew restless. An heir must be named, they demanded. But Loma, ever calm, ever still, gave no answer. Because her answer was the same. "I wait." And so, for years, became 5. The kingdom leaned forward, hoping she would bend. But she remained steady, a pillar in the wind, refusing to be moved, far beyond the borders of Anira. Across wild rivers and desert sands, a young man walked, through fire. His name was still Kalo, but what he had become was something even he did not yet know. And as year 6 approached, destiny stirred. While the kingdom of Anayera whispered doubts and the princess held fast to her vow. Far beyond the borders of familiarity, a man walked the path of storms. His name was Kalo. Gone was the apprentice boy with soot-stained arms and a hopeful heart. The boy who once knelt before a furious king now wore his years like armor. His hands hardened by battle, his back scarred by both whip and war. But his heart still beat with one name. Loma Kalo's journey had begun with nothing but a satchel. A necklace woven from Loma's own hands, and a promise stitched into his soul. He traveled west first through wild terrain and thorned valleys, where hyenas howled like ghosts and rivers refused to be crossed. He slept under trees, ate roots, worked in villages for shelter. There were days when his stomach knew only wind and his skin only the heat of the sun. But still, he moved forward. His first true trial came in the kingdom of Gembi, where a war had broken out between twin princes fighting for the crown. Kalo, caught in the chaos, was mistaken for a spy and thrown into a prison carved deep into the rocks. For 2 months, he languished in darkness, chained beside madmen and murderers. But Kalo did not break. He learned, he listened, he watched. And when the fire reached its breaking point, he acted. One night, using tools fashioned from bone and patience, Kalo escaped, but not alone. He saved the younger prince, Taj, who had been betrayed by his brother and left to die in secret. Together, they fled into the mountains, and it was there that Kalo's fate shifted. Prince Taj owed Kalo his life. He brought him to the land of Osua, a land of warriors and masks, where the wind carried both blessing and curse. There Kalo was trained by some of the fiercest fighters in the region, the Ibungu, a legendary order sworn to protect the innocent and fight only for honor. Kalo learned the sword, the bow, the art of reading silence. He grew tall, lean, quiet, his rage tempered into discipline. And all the while, he carved marks in a tree, one for each moon, one for each step closer to home. But just as his path began to settle, fate cracked open again. A foreign king, Amazu the Cold, ruler of the distant northern empire of Kurando, visited Asua. He saw Kalo spar in the warrior's ring, and he saw talent he wanted to claim, with flattery and gold. King Amazu lured Kalo into his service, promising riches, titles, and a future. But Kalo had one condition: I serve until the 10th year. Then I must return home. Amazu agreed. But men like Amazu never keep promises. For 3 long years, Kalo became a champion in Kurando. He fought. In sand arenas, he trained soldiers. His name spread in whispers, the dark-eyed warrior who never lost, the foreigner with a lion's heart. But Amazu grew jealous. One day, during a feast, the king offered Kalo his daughter's hand in marriage. Kalo bowed low and refused. I am already promised. The night Amazu sent assassins to kill him. Kalo survived barely. He fled Kurando, wounded and hunted, hiding in forests and wastelands. A knife to the ribs. Fever, hunger. For nearly a year, he wandered, delirious, clinging to life with a single word echoing in his mind. Loma, in a quiet fishing village on the coast of the river Zewell. An old healer found him. Her name was Mama Fajiri, and she knew loss in all its forms. For weeks, she nursed him, speaking little, singing to the spirits. One night, as Kalo drifted between sleep and shadow, he whispered, "She's waiting. She still waits." Mama Fajiri touched his forehead and said, "Then you must live. Because a heart that waits that long deserves an ending, not a memory." Kalo recovered. His body healed. A tarot, but his soul carried more scars than skin could. In year 9, Kalo began the journey back. Weaker, slower, older. But still burning with purpose, he avoided roads. Hunted quietly, spoke only when needed. He had lost time, years he could never get back. But if he could reach Anayura before the 10th moon, maybe, just maybe, she would still be there, still, waiting and in the kingdom of Anera. The winds were changing. Princess Loma had become a woman now, not just in age, but in presence. Her father, King Obaid, now bedridden and fading fast, had summoned the council. Choose a husband, they demanded. The throne must not fall to chaos. And among the suitors was a new name, Lord Dako, charming, wealthy, noble, and dangerous. The same shadow the oracle had warned about Loma. Watching him, felt unease. He smiled too easily. Knew too much. And he wanted the crown more than he wanted her. But time was against her. The 10th year was approaching, and Kalo is still nowhere to be found. So now, the hourglass empties. One waits in silence. One walks through pain. And destiny sharpens its blade. The 10th moon is almost here. 10 years, 3,650 nights. Countless full moons. Endless waiting, and finally, it arrived. The 10th moon, the same rare celestial alignment that once lit the sky on the night of the promise. 3 full moons now rose again, bathing Anira in silver. The people gathered for the once-in-a-decade festival of moons, though this year, the air was heavier than music, because the king Obaid the Wise lay dying. His breaths were shallow. His crown sat untouched beside him. His eyes no longer saw clearly, but his voice still carried the weight of his throne. "Loma," he whispered, summoning his daughter. She knelt beside his bed. "You waited all this time for love," he said, "but a kingdom cannot wait forever. Marry and rule, for Anayura's sake." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I will do what must be done," she said, "but only after this night." And outside the palace, in the shadows of the hills, Kalo had returned, his hair now streaked with age, his hands scarred, but his eyes, those same fire-warmed eyes, had not changed. In his satchel, still intact, was the woven necklace Loma gave him a decade ago. He arrived in silence, wearing the cloak of a common traveler. The gates of the city were too heavily guarded for him to approach with ceremony. So he slipped through back alleys, the scent of home-awakening memories he had buried deep and in the town square. He saw at posters announcing the royal engagement. Princess Loma to Lord Dako. Dako had risen quickly in the king's court. With smooth words and strategic alliances, he had positioned himself as the savior, and Aira needed a powerful noble with wealth and soldiers, promising to strengthen the kingdom during this time of uncertainty. But behind his charm lay ambition. He had always envied Kalo, even before the blacksmith's boy was banished. Dako knew of Loma's past, and he had waited patiently for the years to take their toll. Now, with the king dying, Kalo presumed lost, and the princess vulnerable. He saw his moment. But Loma was no fool. Though she played the game of the court, smiled at Daiko's offerings, and listened to the council's pressure, she kept her heart locked. Her mother, Queen Zinneria, still stood silently at her side, the only one who knew the full truth. The night of the engagement ceremony arrived. Drums beat. Lanterns flickered. Nobles wore red and gold. The people of Anaira gathered to witness the declaration, and Loma, dressed in the color of the moon, soft silver robes, her hair braided with beads of river pearl, walked the length of the hall, her face calm, but her heart thundering. The high priest raised the ceremonial staff. "Princess Loma of Anaira," he called. "Do you accept Lord Dako as your husband and heir to the throne?" The hall went still. Loma opened her mouth to speak when suddenly, "She does not." A voice echoed across the palace chamber. Gasps broke out. Guards drew weapons. Eyes turned. A man stepped forward from the crowd. Dusty cloak, tired feet, but standing tall. His face worn by time, but unmistakable. Chaos erupted. Dako shouted, "Seize him! That is an impostor." The guards hesitated, but Kalo held up the necklace, old, frayed, and unmistakable, woven by the princess herself 10 years ago. And then he spoke. He recited the promise. Word for word, the 10th full moon of the 10th year. He said, "Beneath the baobab tree, I vowed I would return, and I have." Loma's breath caught in her chest. "Kalo," she whispered, and in that moment, everything faded. The palace, the guests, the years, only the two of them stood there, not as royalty or warrior, but as two hearts that had survived the impossible. But Dako would not be undone so easily. He is a criminal. He roared. He has no proof of nobility, no standing. The law forbids a commoner from marrying the future queen. The council murmured. Whispers flew, but Queen Zinneria stood. "Then perhaps the law must bend," she said, stepping down from the throne days, "because what I see is a man who traveled through death, hunger, betrayal, and time, just to keep a promise." She turned to the people. "And what kingdom does not honor such a man?" The people murmured in agreement. But Dako, his pride wounded, drew his sword. "If no one will stop this disgrace, I will." He lunged at Kalo. The crowd screamed. Kalo moved swiftly, not as a blacksmith's apprentice, but as the warrior. He had become in 3 movements. Dako was disarmed and on his knees, but Kalo did not strike. "I did not return to fight," he said, "only to fulfill my vow." King obeyed. from his bed, heard the noise. In his final strength, he summoned the guards and asked what had happened. When he was told, he smiled weakly. "Then the throne is in good hands," he whispered. "Let her choose." And so he died, not with regret, but peace, in the days that followed. Princess Loma was crowned Queen of Anayira. Beside her stood Kalo, not a prince by birth, but a king by spirit. The man who walked through a decade of storms for one single sunrise. Their wedding was held beneath the baobab tree, the same place their love had begun. The moon smiled that night, and the stars. The stars danced. The sun rose slowly over Anayira, golden, gentle, as if the heavens themselves were paying homage to the new dawn. The people of the kingdom gathered in silence, not out of fear or command, but in reverence. They watched as their new queen, Loma, stood on the steps of the palace, her head crowned with woven gold, her robes kissed by the wind. Beside her was Kalo, no longer the blacksmith's boy, no longer the wandering ghost of a broken promise. He stood, tall, proud, changed. A man who had crossed oceans of fire to return to the woman he loved, and Anayira, in its wisdom, opened its heart to them both. Their wedding was unlike any the kingdom had seen, not because of its extravagance, though it was beautiful, not because of foreign guests, though many came, but because it was true. It was held beneath the great baobab tree, where 10 years ago a vow had been made, whispered into the wind. Now that same vow was spoken aloud for all to hear. "I waited for you," Loma said, her eyes glistening. "I walked through storms for you." Kalo replied, his voice steady. They exchanged no rings, only the worn necklace still frayed, still strong that had held their bond all those years. And when the people cheered, the earth seemed to echo with joy. Even the birds flew in circles above them, as if the ancestors themselves were clapping in the sky. But the journey did not end with a wedding. A queen's duty is not only to love, but to lead. And Loma, strong from silence, wise from waiting, became a ruler who listened to her people, to her counsel, and to the rhythm of the land. Her reign brought new harvests, peace treaties, and roads that stretched beyond Anayira's borders. And Kalo, he did not hunger for power or titles. He chose instead to serve beside her quietly, steadfastly. He trained the royal guards, taught young men the art of both sword and heart, and became a symbol across the region, not of wealth or bloodline, but of loyalty. They ruled with balance, one forged in the fires of patience, the other shaped by trials of distance and pain. Years passed, and the story of the girl who waited and the man who returned was told from village to village, across rivers into the deserts, up into the mountains. Children grew up hearing of their tale not as fantasy, but as a reminder that time does not destroy what is true. That love, when patient and brave, can outlast doubt, distance, and even despair. And that sometimes, waiting is not weakness. Waiting is strength. One night, many years later, Loma and Kalo sat once again beneath the baobab tree. Their hair had turned silver, but their eyes still held the same fire from that very first night. 10 years, Kalo said softly, his hand in hers. "You waited 10 years. I would have waited 20, she smiled. Or 30, because I knew. You were never sure I would come back. No, she said, but I was sure I wouldn't forget you." The wind whispered through the leaves above them. The stars blinked slowly, and for a moment, time stood still. This is not the story of a grand battle or stolen throne. It is the story of a promise kept, of a woman who waited, and of a man who came back, in a world that moves fast, that forgets easily, where hearts give up when tested. May we remember this tale. May we carry it in our bones like a quiet drumbeat, and may we all, if we must, wait like Loma, with grace, with fire, with love, Asterisk, 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 thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.